On this Sunday we are continuing to commemorate the after feast of that great feast of the exaltation of the Lord's cross. The cross by which our Lord Jesus Christ was crucified and died, and by which, through that death, he was able to enter into the realms of darkness and illuminate that darkness and destroy that darkness because of his presence. And thus we have this reading today about walking in the light of Christ. What does all this mean, walking in the light of Christ? Well, it's all bound up with the understanding of our faith and doing our works according to that faith. Because then truly we will walk in the light of Christ. And Christ's light will show us and help us in that journey. There is a certain passage that St. John Chrysostom mentions in his sermon on Pascha about those who have come to the Paschal feast, some that have fasted, some that haven't, some that have done this and some that have done that. And he reminds everybody that Christ acknowledges the intentions of the heart and gives grace for the fulfillment of that. But that does not mean that because you seek a certain thing or want to do something specific, that every little bit of that is going to be opened up to you like a plan in a book or something like that on how to construct something. Because you are all born as individuals, and never before, neither now nor after, will there be anybody like any of us. Each individual has to somehow, through their life, fulfill the good intentions that they have towards God in that which they might be capable in, or which might be opened up to them. I know that these days are very difficult. And I know that a time has sort of come recently where people are flooding to prophetic, God-bearing fathers wherever they can find them in the world. Russia, Greece, Mount Athos, Romania, and other places. And stand there in queues for days on end sometimes, just to have a few minutes of this person's time to resolve some big issue in their life. And when they finally get to the threshold of where this person is, quite often the answer that they get is one little sentence. And that one little sentence means so much that through the grace of that individuality that they have been given, they are able then to go in peace and fulfill that which their heart desires. Our spiritual Father, and I'm sure that I've told you this before, when he finishing seminary, had a girlfriend that he loved. And he, in his heart, wanted to get married and have a family. He gave this girl a little book to read once called The Way of the Pilgrim, which I also think some of you are familiar with. It's about a man who walks through various places and lives saying the Jesus prayer. And just through that, he is fed and clothed and sheltered. And when this girl read this book, and he asked her about it, what she thought, she said that that man had such a sorrowful life. Such a sorrowful life. And our spiritual father understood from that this girl was not the one that he should be seeking. And so during the times when he had breaks from the lectures of the seminary, he would travel to various places and give talks to the youth about orthodoxy. And at one time, he ended up on a tiny little island, unknown by most people, off the coast of Anchorage in Alaska, called Spruce Island. In 2 hours you could walk around this island. That's how small it was. And on this island at that time was the grave of Saint Herman, who was later to become Saint Herman of Alaska. At that time he was not yet glorified. Living also there was a monk called Father Gerasim, who looked after St. Herman's relics and all the other things that needed to be looked after, in such a lonely place that he said even the loneliness could be a temptation to a person who is not spiritually mature. To keep his time, he would sometimes cut things out of magazines and stick them onto paper to make montages of some sort of spiritual aspect. And when you look at that, you think it's a cute thing like children in primary school would do. But it was one way by which he was able to ward off the temptations of the evil one whilst he said the Jesus prayer. And our spiritual father, as a seminarian, would visit that place because he loved Father Gerasim so much and was obtaining much spiritual benefit from him. And being summer, the Alaskan summer is very nice. It's not boiling hot like it is here. But everything is in greenery, the flowers are out. And he would sit in a cell and read some of the spiritual books. One that really intrigued him was the book about Saint Seraphim of Sarov, which is the big icon that we have there, who was undoubtedly the holiest person that we know of the 19th century. Pretty much undoubtedly, that's how he was cast. In this book, he read a passage about how Saint Seraphim was sitting on a log in the snow with his friend, known as was a great saint throughout the American land. After he said that, he heard the voice again saying, "What else?" And he said, "I want you to send me a fool that can understand me." In other words, a wife who was going to be according to my heart and will understand. And after that he heard no more. Indeed, in his life, when he finished his seminary, he started to make all the moves in order for the glorification of Saint Herman. Writing his life, instructing people about him, finding out the history and all such things. But the fool that he got from the Lord was not a wife, but another monk, Father Seraphim Rose, who became a co-struggler with him, and they both bombarded the whole world with the most profound, probably the best Orthodox literature that had ever happened in the history of the world. That I'm pretty sure of, pretty much, that's what they did. The best Orthodox literature in the whole world, they managed to virtually bombard the whole world with that. As well as glorifying Saint Herman, bringing everything to the state where in the 1970s Saint Herman was glorified and is one of the great saints of our time, and is one of the saints whom we venerate in this chapter. So you see, this idea of making a resolve in your heart is a difficult thing, but it's required of you without the plans, the detailed plans of how to do it, because those detailed plans is for you to figure out. You want to do something good? You make a resolve before the Lord. How that will come to pass, nobody's actually going to tell you step by step. But if you are really and truly hopeful of that and pray about that, it will come to pass, often in ways that you could not imagine, and often in ways which are better than you imagined, because that's the way our Lord works. I had a similar thing in my life, which I will not tell you about. Nevertheless, I want you to understand that and keep that to yourself. When you make a resolve before the Lord and you see the grace that comes with it, then go out and do that work. Don't worry too much about whether this is going to work, or that's going to work, or this won't work, or that won't work. Take the risk. Maybe a little bit of it won't work, but overall it will work. And you will see that you can bring forth fruit and be a worker in the Lord's vineyard, whom on that day of judgment can say, well, I not only had faith, but I brought forth fruit as a token that I had that faith for the Lord. May God help us with such a